Annyeong! Welcome to Dollightful! This doll was a doozy, let me tell you. It makes the mistakes in Nova's infamous video pale in comparison. After creating the pastel rainbow doll, Toki, and the vivid rainbow doll, Ruby, it's time to tackle the dark rainbow doll to complete the trio. I got really hung up on the very first step of this project, designing the character. This is usually my favorite part. 1 or 2 sketches in and I've got it, man. But not this time. Allow me to take you through this absolute journey of the concept art stage. Grab some popcorn. It started innocently enough with a couple loose sketches to feel out the character. There were only 2 prerequisites. She's supposed to be a high schooler and have some mode of transportation like the other 2 dolls. I love the idea of some punk pedaling down the hallway looking at their phone because the unicycle allows them to ride hands-free. It's kind of a shame the unicycle didn't pan out. What fashions come to mind when you picture dark rainbow? Cyberpunk? Rainbow goth? I tried to combine my favorite elements of all these alt fashions, but to little success. I tried some simpler designs next, thinking that perhaps the fishnets and raver gear might end up looking too busy on a real doll. I explored a loose-fitting gym clothes aesthetic for a while. Did I want this character to be more, like, cute and nerdy with big glasses, or sporty and chill? I couldn't decide. It was time to move on and start exploring color palettes, though. All the dolls in the series have fantasy color skin tones, so I knew I wanted to continue that trend. But how to work the dark rainbow part in? Like, these color studies look pretty cool, I guess, but I wouldn't say this is a rainbow character. Maybe the last one. What even is dark rainbow? Is it a standard rainbow toned down until the values are nearly black? Or is it a small pop of neon color in the darkness, like a city street at night? I pictured using the former, but couldn't get it to work, as you'll see later. I gave up on clothes for a while and switched to skin tones. If I could nail down what skin I wanted to use, maybe the rest would fall in place. These were fun experiments, but ultimately didn't help me at all. She was looking less and less hip high schooler and more alien. And we've already been there. I assembled mood board after mood board for inspiration, none of which I can show in this video for copyright reasons, of course. I just pulled images off the internet. But the point is, I had this huge deep well of rich ideas to draw from, but my bucket never brought up any water. What was my problem? I turned back to Ruby's concept art next. Perhaps with a shift in hue saturation, I could glean a successful dark rainbow color palette from my previous work. We tend to think of cool colors like blue, green, and purple as looking darker. So maybe if we could feature those colors in the lineup, the palette will work. You can tell I'm grasping at straws here. 2 months had passed at this point. I was already feeling way behind schedule and beginning to get frustrated. You know that point in a project where you hate everything you've done? So I took a moment. Okay, Catherine, I told myself, you need to make this character something that speaks to you. What are you enjoying more than anything else right now? The answer, friends, is the K-pop group New Jeans. They're the hottest new thing. I love all their songs, and I'm in love with late 90s fashion in a way I didn't know was possible. The high-rise, baggy cargo pant combined with a sassy crop top stole my heart. So next, I essentially took this girl's outfit and upended a bucket of dark rainbow all over it. Finally, I was getting somewhere. I sensed I was close to a breakthrough. Then, one night at 11 p.m. after the baby finally went to sleep, I drew the perfect character. The pants, the swagger, the bunny hat, oh my gosh! Obviously, this is heavily inspired by New Jeans, like borderline thievery, but I think with a completely different color palette, I can differentiate my design enough. The colors fell into place much faster now that I had a character I liked. My favorites were C, E, and F. After passing the file around to friends and family, E was voted most popular. Hope you agree. This is the final design. It took me 3 months to get here. 3 months! I've never had art block that bad in my entire life. Now, let's begin making the doll. Monster High Cleo Nile Gen 3 will be our base. If you've been here before, you'll know that if we plan on painting the doll a different color, it's wise to choose a base doll color that's in the same ballpark. I don't own any dolls blue enough to be a perfect base, but there's something we can do about that. Welcome to my kitchen. It's been a while. You can use nylon dyes, such as iDye Poly here, to change the color of plastics. I've done this before, so I'll be using a blue mixture that I saved from a previous project. Bring the dye to a boil, and drop the body parts in. The pot is a little small for the body, but what you gonna do? Get in there, Cleo. Now, the instructions say maintain temperature for 30 minutes to an hour, but I didn't read the instructions. I'd done this before, I know what to do. Afraid that I might melt the doll's plastic though, I actually turned the temperature down around the 10-minute mark. Big mistake. A quick Google search would have shown me that the melting points of plastic are far above 100 degrees Celsius. I also thought that the color was plenty dark enough, so I pulled her out at 15 minutes. That too may have been a mistake. Hindsight is 20/20, right? Read the instructions again, folks. I learned my lesson. You'll see how this poorly executed dye job affects the rest of the project. I rinsed the parts in cold water and washed them with soap, but color kept leaking out. I even tried pouring boiling water over all the parts again, hoping that might set the color. Look, can you see that velvety sheen to the parts? And the color appears choppy and rough. I thought it was odd at the time, but then again, this is my first go at dyeing a Generation 3 doll. Maybe the plastic's composition is just different, I thought. However, the joints and inner components of the doll are now dark blue, and that's what matters. I'm going to paint the doll with acrylics, and acrylics rub off the joints, so this can look really bad when the color underneath is obviously different, like her original skin tone. Choosing to dye the doll can be a lot of extra work, but it should give the final product a more professional appearance, right? There's a modification we need to make to the hands. Cut 5 short lengths of your thinnest but strongest wire and pinch it into a point. Next, take a pin and pre-poke a tunnel down each finger. The hands are kind of rubbery, so it's not impossible, but still, grip the hand firmly and be careful. We don't want to puncture any real fingers. Remove the pin and push the wire into position. Nudge it in slowly with the help of pliers. Implant bones into all 5 fingers. I'm going to sculpt some killer nails on this doll later, so I keep some of the wire outside the finger. Now you can reshape the fingers' positions with your pliers. I've always wanted to try this, and now I can thanks to Gen 3 hands being larger. Not bad, right? I really wanted her to have that cheeky, rawr hand position. Time for paint. Cobalt blue looks pretty close to my concept. Let's go with that. If you go slow and apply 8 to 10 layers of watered down pigment, you can achieve a smooth, brushstroke-free application. Or you can do 2 to 3 coats of thicker paint and say, the strokes don't bother me that much, it's fine. Once you're happy, seal the deal with matte varnish. This locks in the color and keeps your paint from chipping off. Manicure time! I'll build up her super long stiletto claws by mixing a 2-part Apoxy Sculpt. Just getting a tiny flake of the stuff to encircle and stick to the armature wire is tough work. My own fingers feel like they're getting in the way. But with a little patience and a sharp stick, I was able to adhere all 10 nails to the armature wire. After they cure, come back with a nail file. I'm actually using a nail file on nails for once. And shape the epoxy. Be gentle, you don't want to pop them off. They look so cute! I've always wanted to try ridiculously long fakies like this, but it hasn't happened yet. Maybe for my birthday one year. Paint them rainbow, of course, and seal them with a gloss varnish. It's time to give her new hair! I covered the rooting process pretty thoroughly in my previous dolls video, so I'm going to gloss over it this time. I use these poppin' colors of nylon hair for a cute half-and-half style. Isn't it beautiful? Looks great. Now it's face-up time. Or not. I came back the very next day to find the doll's blue skin mottled and blotchy. The color had darkened and was uneven. What happened? Well, I can't continue the doll like this. So I scratched it all back off and painted her again. I was starting to get the notion that the dye might be the root of the problem, but I still thought I could force it to behave. Y'all know I'm not one to give up on a project. I called in backup, and we used the airbrush to apply a perfectly even layer of primer first, then a fresh layer of cobalt blue. Surely a primer would act as a barrier to any funky stuff happening in the plastic. If it's this hard with the primer, I don't have high hopes for the blue color.
완전 막혔어. 아, 진짜 너무 심하다. Come on. Ooh, that was bad.
It was just down on our booth, not in the front.
나와야 치더라.
It must be said that the airbrush sure does give you a beautiful, even color. I avoid using it because it's so finicky. But that sure looks good, huh? I coat all the pieces once again with varnish, and now we can finally draw the face. When working on a darker skin color, I find layering down a base of white for the eyes to be the most efficient approach to building up a face that pops. I want wide, open eyes, so I overdraw just a little bit above the mold. Next, I come in with watercolor pencils and sketch out the irises, eyebrows, stripes, and bold eyeliner. If you wonder about any of the materials I use for this doll, a list can always be found in the description box below the video. Use a tiny brush and wet the pigment off of your watercolor pencil to reach into thin crevices like the lips. I can't get a large toothy grin like my concept art without resculpting the face, but I can cheat a little bit by simply drawing the teeth on top of the lips and creating a false border with a black line. After a spray of Mr.Super Clear sealant, it's time to add the rainbow colors. I found wetting the pencils and using a brush to be the easiest approach for rainbow eyes. The pigment can be reactivated on the doll, so you can push colors around without building up thick brush strokes. I laid color down over the eyebrows and stripes as well. With a couple finishing touches, like thickening the lines around the iris and highlighting certain areas of the face, she's done! She's got the confident and mischievous expression I wanted, and the colors pop without looking too busy. Face up done! Once again, I came back the next day to take down the hair burrito, and does the face look a bit darker to you? Well, if you lay on the sealant really thick, that can happen sometimes. I guess I put on too much sealant. Let me just touch up the brightest parts with acrylic paint real quick. That'll stay for sure, right? Even with primer and sealant, the dye is somehow bleeding through? Is that what's happening? Even though I dunked it back in boiling water and washed it a million times with soap, it's still bleeding? Ah, this doll is cursed. Okay, I think I need to change gears and think about something else. Let's set the body and head aside for now, you know, kick the can down the road as far as possible, and turn our attention to clothes instead. The clothes are going to be so much fun. Their outfit is incredibly detailed, so for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to focus on how I made the pants and hat specifically, and skip over the rest. You've seen me make a shirt before. I want to show you the new stuff. So, baggy cargo pants. After altering a pattern to fit the new Generation 3 doll, and drastically widening the pant legs, I cut out the pieces and got to work. I'm happy to report that this pattern is available now on my Etsy shop if you've got to make a pair for your doll too. They sew together the exact same way as my other pants patterns, with a couple minor differences. Before flipping the pants right side out, run gathering stitches along the outseam and the inseam. Tie them off at the top, but leave the bottom threads loose. At the very end, after you've done everything else on the pants, you can tug these gathered threads until the bunchiness looks right. Fabric doesn't hang the same way on doll scale, so it needs a little help to look appropriately heavy and baggy. Another addition I've made to the pants is a short ribbon sewn from front to back that catches the crotch. The pants themselves have a dropped crotch, so unless you want the pants floating up past the doll's midsection, the ribbon is a must. I cut large rectangles to be the doll's pockets. Simply pinch a corner and sew a 45-degree line. Do this on all 4 corners. Turn it right side out, and now you have a tray shape. Seal the edges with glue, then decide where you want the pants to go. I simply whip stitch around the perimeter of each pocket to secure it to the pants. Want a tip? Pin the pockets down while you sew, and use a large cylinder like this glue stick to fill out the pants and give your fingers something to hold on to. Sew a long tube, iron it flat, and sew stitches down either side. Tuck it inside and stitch down small segments. And now you've got belt loops. I did 2 on front and 2 on back. Now for the fun part. Painting on the designs. Paying close attention to my concept art, I paint on all the stars, swirls, hearts, and lines in white gesso first. They look pretty good in black and white, don't they? But of course, we must add color. These fluorescent paints are getting more use than I anticipated. I think I might be experiencing a neon phase. At one point, arcade rooms, and particularly the carpet flooring from arcades, was a source of inspiration, and you can see it in these shapes, can't you? The more translucent colors like yellow and green may need multiple coats. Isn't the gradient fill awesome? It's giving me early 90s airbrush clothing vibes. To fake tiny zippers, glue, fold, and cut several strips out of colored fabric. Glue seals the edge and makes it stiffer. Cut them down to size, I'm matching the width of the pocket, and glue them on. If your pockets have been trying to crumple, this helps them stand back out. Take black paint and your teeniest brush to draw a zigzag line all the way across. Cut zipper pulls out of paper and set them in place with a touch of glue. These aren't functional pockets, but who actually uses all the pockets on cargo pants anyway? It's fashion. These pants are already amazing, but wait, there's more! Using the same glue and fabric technique, I cut out these belts and sewed them around plastic chain links, and sewed them to the pants. There's also one more belt, and the place you'd actually expect one, threaded through the belt loops. The finishing touch, a glossy statement belt buckle. Adorbs! Let's make the hat next. This is by far the best way to make a hat, so major props to Craft Nori, whose tutorial I got this technique from. Measure the circumference of your doll's head at the point you want the cap to sit. Mine's 13.5 centimeters. Add 0.5 for seam allowance, which gives us 14. And we'll divide that by the 6 sections of a baseball cap, which gives us 2.33 centimeters. Take out a piece of felt, thinner works better on doll projects, and mark all 6 sections along a ruler. For my doll, each section is 2.33, so I mark it again at 4.66, 6.9, 9.3, 11.6, and 14. Take the measurement from about mid-forehead to the top center of the head. Mine's 3.5. This is the height of your hat. Mark the height onto the felt and form a rectangle. Draw off the 6 sections. Using these rectangles as your guide, draw archways into each one of them. I marked more guides to try to get them even, but mostly eyeballed it. Draw a notch on the bottom corner of the last archway. Cut your rectangle and archways out of the felt. Fold it in half and cut out that notch. Spread glue over your entire felt piece and stick it to the fabric. Cotton works best. Once it dries, trim down the fabric, but leave yourself an edge to work with. Don't cut around the archways, keep it straight across the top. Take a square off the corner and clip the curves before applying glue to the bottom section of the hat and folding the fabric over. Take a needle and thread, and one archway at a time, sew them together. After 2 sections are joined, fold over the next section and join those sides, and so on and so forth. We're finally forming the curved bowl shape. Once done, trim down the excess fabric and turn the cap right side out. Feel out the wonky parts with your fingers to smooth out any lumps. Place the cap back on the felt and sketch out a brim. Mark the edge of the cap as well. Cut out 2 of these pieces, but leave one with the excess attached. Glue the larger brim piece to your fabric. Cut the curves. And glue the fabric down around the edge. Take the smaller brim piece and glue it on top. This finishes the underside of the brim. Cut the brim into streamers beneath the curve. Then use these streamers to glue the brim to the inside of your cap. Make sure it's oriented towards the front. While the whole thing is still wet with glue is a great time to shape the felt into a subtle curve. Glue a small ribbon across the gap in the back, and that's the basic hat done. Isn't it adorable? It may seem daunting at first because of the measurements and everything, but it whips together quickly. I'm not stopping here though. Much like her jeans, this hat is going to be decked out. Starting with the calligraphy. I hesitantly sketch on the words with white pencil first to get the placement right, then once again paint it with white gesso, before filling in the neon rainbow gradient. Oh yeah. Now for the bunny ears. I know you were waiting for this part. Here's the little pattern piece I came up with. The measurements are marked in case you want to make your own. I cut 4 pieces out of slightly floppier black knit fabric. Place 2 and 2 together, sew, and turn the ears right sides out. Next, using this dark rainbow selection of colors, I stitch embroidery thread X's down each ear. The wrong side of the ears looks pretty bad, though. I should have done this before sewing and turning the ears, and that would have looked cleaner. Oh well. Pinch the ears closed at the top. Then stitch them to the cap. Add a button or 2, and the cap is done. I think we can all agree that this is, the cutest hat ever made in the entire history of the universe. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Like I mentioned earlier, I could go into all the details about every part of her outfit, but the video would be way too long. Here, I'll give you the shotgun version, okay? I made tiny buttons and the belt buckle by pouring UV resin over printed images. I sculpted her keychain character from air-dry clay and painted it with acrylics. I stained white furry fabric green with paint before sewing them around her hands and fingers to form chunky paw gloves. They look a little messy. I used seed beads, wires, and threads to make her necklaces and earrings. Her shoes are simple repaints of these incredibly detailed Nike shoe keychains I found that happen to fit Monster High dolls perfectly. Alright, lastly, let's make her scooter. Seeing as this doll features a lot of influences from 90s fashion, I definitely had a good old Razor brand scooter in mind when I drew this one. I used simple materials like chopsticks and tongue depressors to build the base of the scooter. I drilled holes and drove stakes through several parts to make the structure sound. Here come the streamers on the handlebars, made from embroidery threads and tiny beads. I glue them to the wooden handles, then wrap the bar with fabric. Monster High dolls have long legs, which means the scooter would have to be very tall to actually reach her hands. I thought that looked pretty silly, so I kept the scooter on the short side on purpose. I prepared these wheels out of air dry clay earlier and popped them into the scooter with a dowel to hold them in place. They can spin, but admittedly it's a bit stiff. I glue the vertical piece to the baseboard via a diagonal bar, a detail that gives the scooter a nice sense of realism, I think. In case you were wondering, I switched from a unicycle to a scooter when I decided she should have huge baggy pants. I kept thinking about how baggy pants would totally clog up the wheel and pedals on a unicycle, and figured a scooter was a better match for the 90s aesthetic anyway. With the wood structure done, I paint the scooter with rainbow colors to match. Ta-da! An adorable doll-sized scooter. We've made everything! The pants, the bunny hat, the crop top, all the accessories, her scooter, and the doll, of course. I should be done with this project, but I can't ignore it any longer. The face has continued to darken, the body has developed lighter and darker patches, and my matte varnish has turned into an eerie sheen. I've never seen anything like it. I can only assume the root cause of this cursed doll was indeed the polyester dye done at the very beginning of the video. So what can we do? Well, I have one more Cleo doll. That's right, I'm starting over. But with one major difference, no dyeing the doll this time. I'll just have to live with the joints being a different color. Take it from the top! And done! Again! Check out this side-by-side of the two bodies and faces. You can really see the difference. I'm glad I took the time to remake her. I love the character design and would have been disappointed with myself had I gone ahead and used the cursed body. I did use the former hands though. I didn't feel like doing all that again. Can you blame me? Let's dress them up and finally see the complete doll. What to name this character? Funny enough, it took ages to find the appropriate name. Of course, the doll that has tripped me up the most continues to be a challenge right up till the very end. I've decided to call them Uvie, in reference to ultraviolet light. Despite the many issues and setbacks, I'm really proud of this doll. The color palette was a huge challenge for me, but with a little time and perseverance, I came up with a character that I absolutely love. She's definitely getting a prominent spot on the doll shelf. Here's an interesting development though. Because I used fluorescent paints on both Uvie and Ruby, what was supposed to be the third and final doll in the series of rainbow dolls looks more like, well, Toki's the odd one out now, isn't she? Because of the sheer saturation of colors, Toki looks practically grayed out by comparison. If we're being quite honest, these two match each other well, but Toki looks like she belongs with my other pastel rainbow dolls. So my vision of a rainbow trio didn't pan out the way I'd hoped. But I do love each doll individually, so no regrets. Thank you so much for watching! I hope you love Uvie as much as I do. Like and subscribe so that you catch all future episodes of doll customizing goodness, and I'll see you next time! Stay artsy! Annyeong!